It's the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome! Hey, everybody. Welcome in. My name is Chris, and this is a show in which, if you can guess the letter of the alphabet that I say the most in today's show, you win a prize. Hello there, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. No matter where you're listening, I appreciate you. I see you over there at the gym, or driving the kids around, or listening while you work. Great to have you here. I want to remind you that we have a fun episode coming up tomorrow on the Yacht Club feed. We're having our first ever guest on that show. Paywall Andy and I will be hosting Drew McGarry of Defector and Deadspin fame. We'll probably talk a little about football, but also some stuff about Drew's career and his writing and life and stuff like that. If you're a Yacht Club subscriber, we would love it if you'd stick around for the winter, because we will be doing weekly shows, some football, some fun non-football stuff too. If you're not a subscriber yet, but that sounds fun, we would love to have you. It's $5 a month, and you can find all the details at harrisfootball.com. We, of course, get started today with the Monday night game, the Chargers outlasting the Eagles in overtime, a game which somehow you come out feeling worse about everybody. Certainly everybody on offense. Okay, I guess not Saquon Barkley, who puts up a big game and finally scores an explosive touchdown in the second half. But also Barkley somehow was only given 5 carries in that second half, in the midst of yet another Philly offensive effort, which I will charitably describe as disjointed. Barkley had a couple of good runs early in the first half, finally finding those lanes that were so common in 2024, gains of 20 and 10, and you felt like, well, maybe they figured something out. But no, most of the rest of the first half, the lanes dried up, and Barkley, as he's been getting done all year, gets met in the backfield. Although in the 2-minute drive at the end of the first half, he was once again very good. There just isn't any question about Saquon himself being cooked, even though I'm 100% positive the metrics bros will try and make that argument this winter. Really hard to stomach if I'm an Eagles fan with the quarterback looking like that Saquon Barkley only, having done 13 for 69 at the half, only gets 5 more carries until overtime. And one of those is a typical Saquon house job where he scores that long touchdown. For fantasy, though, I'm certain that he gave you a big sigh of relief if you have him. And of course, the rest of the Philly story comes down to Jalen Hurts. 2 first-half interceptions, a first-half fumble, 2 of those happening on the same play, and then also a pick in the second half and 1 in overtime. Not all of these interceptions were created equal. The 1 in overtime, I thought, it's just a really great play by a defender. It's a good throw. It's a good decision. Just a sick play. But remember, first play of the second quarter, Hurts inexplicably sailed a pass over Jahan Dotson's head that was nearly picked, but, kind of went through the guy's arms and barely hit the ground. The one in the second quarter where he's looking for Devontae Smith, he just stared down Smith the entire time. The one in the fourth quarter, it was high. It's not a perfect pass, but A.J. Brown should catch that, or at least not boop it up in the air to be intercepted. A horror performance, though. But, Jalen Hurts, again, crystallizes that he can be a good player, but he doesn't throw well in rhythm. He doesn't get through his progressions as fast as you want. He certainly does read the field, but just a little slower than you need. And for all his athleticism, he doesn't really make plays on the move anymore, or hasn't lately. When the Chargers got him running out of the pocket last night, you just felt like it was inevitable that he was going to throw it away or run out of bounds. We've been having this conversation for, 6 weeks. No one person bears all the blame. But the quarterback does have a margin for error that's a lot slimmer than you would, your typical Super Bowl MVP would have. You have receivers who freelance probably a little too much and then, can sometimes do silly things at the end of a catch. An offensive line that's been weird. Like, there are way more injured offensive lines, but they are a little beaten up, and sometimes they just seem to be blowing assignments at the wrong moment. And you also know I'm going to say, I think, they have a head coach who's always 5 seconds away from a nervous breakdown and not temperamentally suited to be an NFL coach. I admit that could be wrong. I judge that by what I see, by his outbursts and his demeanor and the immaturity that he displays in public. Maybe things are very different behind the scenes. But the bottom line is, when a team tries to tell us who they are after 5 straight weeks of this, we should probably believe them. And yet, if you somehow survive this game from Jalen Hurts and you're in your fantasy playoffs and you see a home date against the Raiders in Week 15, I mean, how am I getting Jalen Hurts out of my top 10 quarterbacks for this week? A.J. Brown is actually on a production heater, even if it doesn't always look great. Devontae Smith was completely dead last night, but I thought Hurts' best throw of the game came in overtime to Smith, a deep in-cut that got them out of trouble after they'd had a holding call. And then, of course, the Chargers would jump off sides on a 4th and 4, which was something else. It feels bad to have to rely on an offense that looks pretty broken, but as boring as it is to keep me hearing me say it over and over, you probably do have to keep relying on them. And the Chargers, you want to talk about broken. I'm guessing a lot of you were able to watch this game last night and maybe hadn't been able to see all that much Charger action lately otherwise. And I'm guessing you probably said to yourself, oh, that's why Harris has been so annoying about the Chargers. Yeah, dude, because however gross and disgusting the Eagles were on offense last night, I mean, come on. Whatever alarms are going off for the Philly offense, do you see why I've been sounding the 5 bells about Justin Herbert? They even lost another tackle, a bad one, but Trey Pipkins got hurt, and Bobby Hart, who I'm sure someone in the Charger organization swore a private oath that he would never be a major part of their offensive line ever again, but there he was. I mean, everyone got boat raced on that offensive line, and as I've been saying for weeks, this is a situation where you can sit guys in your fantasy playoffs. This isn't a too big to fail situation. You'll recall on a 3rd and long on that Charger first drive, Herbert almost got hit but checked a screen emergency-wise to Kamani Vidal, and he ran for 60 yards into the red zone. Kind of a little bit of a fluky, lucky play. Take it away, Herbert had 79 yards passing in a game with an overtime possession. There's no question Herbert playing with a broken hand was gutsy, and in the second half and overtime, he went Josh Allen mode. I'm going to do this myself. Scrambling, running, converting in big spots. Super courageous. Down 3 with a blood and guts drive that got the thing to overtime and then did it again in OT. But how in the world can we think anything we saw last night is sustainable? Sacked 7 times. Nakobe Dean just obliterating Vidal over and over in pass protection. Herbert completed less than half his passes, had a pressure rate well over 50%. We should be running away from our Chargers in our fantasy playoffs. Ladd McConkey's first catch comes in the 4th quarter. I mean, the Eagles secondary is great and played really good until committing a crucial interference in overtime. But the Charger offense is broken, and we all know it, and we all know why, but there's just nothing they can do to fix it. And in Week 15, they go to Kansas City in effort to slay the dragon once and for all. But how's that going to go any better for this offense? The variable here was the return of Omari and Hampton. Vidal started, but Hampton was in on the second play last night. Vidal made the big play on that 3rd down, but to finish off that drive, Hampton was the one who was in there and caught a pass in the flat and got in the end zone, scored LA's only touchdown. But pretty obviously, they do not trust Hampton in pass protection. 14 times Vidal was asked to pass block, and he didn't do it very well, and Hampton was asked to do it twice. And given the state of that game, that meant Omari and Hampton didn't play all that much. The snap count was 49 Vidal, 22 Hampton. On 3rd downs, it was 16-3. And Hampton's overtime run to help set up the winning field goal was really good. We did get the touchdown out of him. Plus, this could be your classic work him back in game. And now maybe in Week 15, he'll get a massive workload, but it would be tough to assume that. So, we're not ranking Hampton number 8 among running backs next week, if you know what I mean. He looked like a good combination of fast and big in that game, no question, but he is destined to be ranked in the 20s, I think, among running backs, and then Vidal will be closer to him this week, which will make for annoying flex decisions for both of them in a lot of leagues.
Today's kickoff.
Okay, on today's show, we have 4 games from this past Sunday that we have not yet talked about on the podcast. If you don't hear their game that you're interested in on today's show, it means we did it on Monday's podcast. Coming up here right now, I'll talk about what I thought I saw in Dolphins Jets, Commanders Vikings, Broncos Raiders, and Titans Browns. And then, do we do a waiver wire in advance of the fantasy playoffs? Oh, you're darn right we do. Jeff Bell from Football Guys will join the show. Jeff and I will count down the players we think you could consider trying to add in advance of Week 15. I think you'll have some fun. I sure hope so, and it really means a lot. Thank you so much for listening. We are sponsored by Blue Land, cleaning products but better. Why oh why do we throw away so much plastic with our cleaning supplies and our hand soaps? Why oh why is there so much microplastic in our cleaning supplies? Those dish and laundry pods, the plastic gets in everything, gets in our food. That is why I have switched to Blue Land here aboard the yacht. All my cleaning products, especially during the holidays, when we spend time cooking and hosting, cozying up indoors, Blue Land's products meet the highest standard of clean. They're effective yet gentle on people and the planet. In fact, Blue Land was named an EPA Safer Choice Partner of the Year. I use them. Cleaning sprays, toilet bowl cleaner, hand soap, 100% microplastic free, no chlorine bleach, no harsh chemicals, and you don't throw away the bottles. They send refills in tablet form. You keep using the same bottle, just add water. It's something you can do right now for the planet. It's the right thing. I do it, and you won't compromise on clean. I can get you 15% off your first order at blueland.com/Harris. I do not throw bottles away anymore, and I don't eat microplastics. Blueland.com/Harris for 15% off. Blueland.com/Harris.
Is he got it or he doesn't have it?
Sorry, Rich Eisen. Catching strays. I just never forget. I assume that must have been during a Jets game, right? It must have been. Let's get going again, and we'll look at the rest of Sunday's games. Not the best games to watch, but fun to talk about. The Dolphins-Jets, certainly a game defined by its injuries. We should have known going in this would be a Zach Wilson revenge game, playing a couple series in the end because the Dolphins were shellacking the Jets. I mean, first of all, if you're the New York Jets and you literally are referred to as gangrene, and then you don't wear a single piece of clothing that's green on your uniform, instead go out there in hideous all-brown uniforms for some reason, I think you kind of got what you deserved in this game. And unfortunately, what the Jets got was a Tyrod Taylor groin injury in the first quarter. So here comes rookie Brady Cook, who I'd never heard of in my life, forced into action, and all that hopeful stuff that we said on behalf of Adonai Mitchell and Breece Hall goes up in flames. With Cook, it was just not a functional offense. And in fact, there was a split second in the second quarter where Brady Cook kind of carelessly fumbled under pressure, and Breece Hall scrambled to go get the ball, recover it, and he banged his knee and was rolling around there for a moment on the turf. And I was like, oh my God, what happened here? But fortunately, he was okay and would stay in the game. Also would only do 43 scrimmage yards and not get targeted in the screen game, which seems pretty dumb when the kid quarterback can't do anything at all. But the bottom line was the kid quarterback couldn't do anything at all. It was horrendous with Tyrod out and Justin Fields unavailable. The only touchdown they scored was an Isaiah Williams punt return, losing 21-0. This was truly bad. A.D. Mitchell catches one ball down the right sideline with 2 minutes left in garbage time. And then at the end of that garbage drive, Cook tried Mitchell in the end zone, and he was open, but it was underthrown and intercepted. I don't know that I have much more to say. We don't sniff any Jets receivers in lineups at all if anyone other than Tyrod Taylor is under center Week 15 against the Jaguars. Best offensive play here was a fake punt with a pitch out at the end of it. Even Breece Hall, I mean, he's probably still a flex, but loses some appeal if Taylor can't play next week. For the Dolphins, the injury that defines this game for them, you have certainly heard about by now. It's Devon Achane. Fortunately, he got enough yards and a touchdown early during the 21-0 beginning, in which Miami, for 3 possessions, just went up and down the field, and the Jets couldn't tackle anyone. They couldn't tackle me, let alone Devon Achane. We had a wee little glimpse there at what the 2023 Dolphins were like, but it certainly dried up quick. Tua Tagovailoa came out dealing and then just forgot how to do it from the second quarter on. And the fateful play for Achane, second quarter, he gets another wide open lane for a 20-yard run, but you could see him wince. He would go into the blue tent and he would not return to the game. We were told that it's a rib injury and that he doesn't have a fracture, which would seem to make it a pain tolerance issue, which would make you think that he's probably going to be able to play in Week 15. Crazily, in the AFC of 2025, the Dolphins actually are still mathematically alive for a playoff spot. They have the same record as the Chiefs and the Ravens, but they're not going to the playoffs, but they will try on Monday night against the Steelers. And that's another part of the bummer, is that they don't play until Monday night, so it's possible we don't have perfect information by the time we have to make our decisions for lineups. So Jaylen Wright's name is certainly going to come up in the waiver segment later in the show. It was definitely Jaylen Wright and not Ollie Gordon who stepped up as the main man in Achane's absence. Gordon didn't get a touch until the midway point of the second quarter. It was a pitch out. He fumbled it, but the Dolphins recovered. Gordon did score a fourth quarter touchdown, but it came at the end of a drive where Wright had carried it over and over and over and needed a blow. Obviously, I can't promise that their usage would be exactly that way if we do get a game where we know in advance that Achane can't play. Certainly based on how this one looked, you'd be preferring Jaylen Wright. He looked good. I think it should be said, a lot of why any Dolphins running back looks good is that offensive line is back to producing huge rushing lanes. Achane and Wright, they just, in this game, could get going and cover so much ground before ever getting touched. The difference for sure, though, is that Achane is clearly an elite pass catcher and mover once he catches a ball. And there were painful examples, a couple of them in this game, where that you could conclude that Jaylen Wright is not that. There was one where Tua's inside his own 10-yard line. He doesn't turn his head or move his body in a way that makes a catch easy. Tua could definitely have been called for a pretty clueless backwards screen inside his own 10 when Warren never turned his head around, but it was called not backwards, so it was an incomplete pass. Next possession, Tua almost threw a pick six on a potential screen to Wright, but the defender dropped it. Reading the tea leaves so far, I think Achane's going to be okay to play, but we'll stay tuned to that. Tua got a touchdown pass from the 1-yard line on the first drive. That went to Jalen Waddle. Those first three drives, one aided by a Mason Taylor fumble where he just hands the ball to a Dolphins defender deep in Jets territory. That made everything look good. Darren Waller even had a handoff for a nice gain, but yeah, this was 21-0 right away, and it was pretty clear the Jets were never going to score points with that quarterback, so there was just not a lot of incentive for Miami to push the envelope thereafter. Talking about a 31-0 game, also not thrilling. The Vikings did take out some frustrations on the Commanders, and the idea here, I guess in theory, would have been, these two second-year quarterbacks, disastrous sophomore seasons for both of them, but they're back in there. Let's see. I'm just going to say neither of them knocked my socks off, but obviously way more dire that Jaden Daniels throws a pick on a fourth down screen that gets batted up in the air, and he tries to chase Andrew Van Ginkel down. It was actually Terry McLaurin who would make that tackle eventually, but Daniels gets blocked on the return, falls down, hurts his arm again, and he's out of the game. Marcus Mariota is back in. We're told with the benefit of a couple of days that it wasn't a serious injury, so maybe it means Daniels is okay to keep playing, but I sure don't know that as of me talking to you right now. For as long as he was in there, which was most of 3 quarters, it didn't work. Washington got shut out. McLovin did catch a deep out on the first series. That was a good throw by Daniels. The first drive was good. Daniels' mobility looked normal, looked good. They weren't calling run plays for him, but he was scrambling. And then Chris Rodriguez kind of also dealing on that first drive, a cutback run to pound it down inside the 5. He got them to the 2. And then the Commanders out-clevered themselves with 3 straight passes when the run had been working. 4th down from the 2. The Coconut D-Boney has one. Corum off his hands in the end zone for a turnover on downs. And that was really the only drive that was any good for either quarterback in the first half. True, in the 2-minute drill at the end of the half, McLaurin had a few shorties, but they wound up punting and were down 14-0 at halftime. That was still the score on the series where, first of all, Debo got hit in the face by a screen pass because he wasn't looking, and then Daniels also got hurt. So even though, yes, it's 31-0, it was 14-0 through much of that game. I'm certainly not basing a lot of fantasy decisions on J.J. McCarthy having cured all of his ills either. You'll see 7 carries for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He didn't even play a snap until midway through the third quarter. That work is almost all Basura time. And Marcus Mariota did not stir the echoes from last Sunday night against the Broncos. His first possession, he threw a pick directly to Harrison Smith. He also threw a deadly medicine ball to Zach Ertz, which caused Ertz to get bent over and tear his ACL. He's out for the season. So, overall, Mariota, I don't know about overall. He was good last week, but not someone who's going to elevate most of that team. We'll see what the Commanders decide to do with Daniels next week against the Giants. For the Vikings and 9, we can appreciate his lack of mistakes and the fact that a professional operation around him could take advantage when he wasn't throwing picks. Drew Brees was actually the commentator for this game. He was pretty insistent that based on his observations, McCarthy was mostly being told, hit your back foot, throw your first read, and then, if you don't like your first read, then don't do anything else, run around. You just throw it away. Although I would say late third and early fourth quarter, McCarthy did come off his first read a few times and, scrambled and then made okay throws. But face it, what you really care about here, of course, the main reason I shouldn't even be watching and talking about a game like this is Justin Jefferson. And what you've seen is the box score, 2 catches, 11 yards. The only good play was a 3rd and 12, kind of a middle dump off where Jefferson turned it upfield and got the first down by himself, got into the red zone. It's tough because you could tell once the game was out of control, boy, they were trying to get the connection to Jefferson going. Fourth quarter, Jefferson got a jump ball deep in the end zone, incomplete. On a fairly meaningless drive after that, the Vikings were at the 2-yard line. They tried to do it for you. Jefferson owners out there, they did. The cameras showed, the Commanders weren't messing around. This wasn't like a quote-unquote George Pickens double team where it's not really a double team. There's just a safety that's vaguely over the top. No. The Commanders put one guy 2 yards to Jefferson's left and one guy 2 yards to his right and did not let the ball come his way in the end zone. And it's super grim. You'll see 4 for 62 for Jordan Addison. It turns out McCarthy just has better chemistry with Addison. No. Actually, 2 of those catches came with the score 31-0 and Jefferson on the bench. Addison did catch a nicely thrown deep out on a 3rd and 8. He also had one wide open thrown way over his head. 3 touchdowns to McCarthy, all to tight ends, check downs or misdirections. Did I mention it's bleak? Yeah, it's bleak. I'm the one who's got to rank Justin Jefferson today. How fun for me. In Week 15, the Vikings will visit Dallas and play the Cowboys. I love it when we're sponsored by Viore, because am I sitting here making the show wearing Viore clothing? I sure am. I've got the Sunday Performance joggers on right now, as well as a glorious Stratotech t-shirt. I've been told this t-shirt makes me look all muscly. I will take it. It's part of Viore's lounge collection, the most comfy clothing. I work out in Viore. I watch football in Viore. You gotta try Viore. And unbelievable gift idea, get the wife a pair of joggers. She will love you for it. The great thing about Viore is the clothes are made with recycled material. It's a company that's trying to do the right thing. They donate to try and get plastic out of the oceans. You see them everywhere now because the clothes are so comfortable and so great. It's an investment in your happiness. and I can get you 20% off your first purchase at VUORI.com/Harris. Exclusions apply. Visit website for full terms and conditions. Not only do you get 20% off, but also free shipping on U.S. orders over $75 and free returns. Check out the Lounge collection. Shop for the holidays. Nobody was ever sad to get the gift of Viore. That's Viore.com/Harris.
Why, Harris, are you doing that?
Because it's my job. I got to do it, Tony. I'm sorry about that. We got a couple more games to talk about. The Broncos in an impossibly sleepy game against the Raiders, where two things were at play. Both teams had a plane to catch, and also PD Sunshine took the points. The Broncos win easily, but if you had them and you gave 8.5 points, oh, buddy, that was pretty rough. Do we have actionable takeaways from this game? I think there's one, and that is, we're 2 weeks for Troy Franklin. That's now a pattern. He officially is not usable in a fantasy league right now, probably in a lot of redraft leagues, not rosterable right now, because yes, Franklin did catch a red zone screen in the second half. He was tackled immediately, and he just wasn't out there very much. Early in that game, Lil Jordan Humphrey, that eternal Sean Payton favorite, was getting targets before Franklin was, and the rookie, Pat Bryant, was running early on in 2 receiver sets, with Franklin only mixing in thereafter. The numbers tell us 28 routes for Pat Bryant, only 15 routes for Troy Franklin. Cortland Sutton was the only receiver who played more than half the snaps, so it is definitely a rotation. But Franklin no longer belongs anywhere near the top 50 receivers, and he is seemingly droppable. If you get a big game out of Troy Franklin from this point forward, it's going to be kind of an anomaly, you would say. So that's one concrete takeaway. Are there any others? It was a pillow soft matchup. However, I also thought that this was pretty clearly RJ Harvey's best game on tape. It felt like the one where he bounced runs outside the least, where he consistently did not go down on first contact, which, Barons and I on the Wednesday show have been saying over and over. This guy goes down on first contact a lot. It didn't look like it to me on Sunday. It was a very good performance. He converts another close-in touchdown in the second half. And yeah, I remember at the very beginning of the game, first set of downs, Broncos have a 3rd and 2, and Harvey caught a screen, and he hasn't done too much in those situations because he was dead. And he did it all by himself. That was terrific. By the end of the game, it was hard to read anything into anything, but we didn't know anything about whether, last time the Raiders played the Broncos, it was a pretty close game, and they kind of maybe felt like they needed that play, and they threw it to Harvey, and he ran through 3 tacklers, basically all by himself. I think with no J.K. Dobbins, it was never a stretch to say that you wanted to use Harvey as a flex regardless, but this is the first time I'm coming on the show and telling you I really liked his tape. Okay, yes, it was against the Raiders, but I just try and say what I see. Marvin Mims had a punt return touchdown in the second quarter, and otherwise felt like just one of those games where Denver kind of could have decided to do whatever it wanted to do, and what it wanted was hilariously long drives to keep the clock moving, because as I say, everybody apparently needed to get on a bus. A 14-play drive, a 14-play drive, and a 19-play drive. Lots of running, lots of very short passes and dump-offs. Really no need to do anything exotic. The opening drive took 9 minutes. That wasn't even one of the ones that I mentioned, and ended with a Bo Nix red zone scramble for a touchdown. The Raiders would then launch their only good drive of the game. So the first quarter in this game consisted of 1 drive apiece, 1 for each team. Not thrilling to watch, and, kind of a slog. Denver basically burned most of the fourth quarter themselves with their super, super long drive and kicked a field goal where they went up 24-7. And that's where this guy's shenanigans came in. Sunshine. The game was over, but Pete Carroll was teaching his guys a lesson in determination that their next head coach will no doubt treasure calling timeouts, hurrying, scoring a garbage touchdown, trying an onside kick, not getting it, stopping Denver on a meaningless fourth down, calling timeouts, and then nevertheless, the game is over, but then Ernest Jones commits a delay of game by slapping the ball away as the clock is running out, and that got Vegas into field goal range, and Petey Sunshine kicked it last play of the game for the cover. Great job, Petey. I did not bet this game. I'm very glad, because that would be frustrating. On the actual field, like I said, first drive was good, and Brock Bowers got home by scoring on the final play of the first quarter. But after that first drive, all Denver had to do was blitz, and Geno Smith would backpedal and either throw it away or get sacked. It's a bad roster. Vegas has a bad roster, but Geno Smith has not covered himself in glory. How about right before halftime? It's fourth down. They're outside field goal range. It's only 14-7, and the Raiders call a Hail Mary, because that's what you do. And Geno gets pressured, and instead of throwing it away and taking up all the time on the clock, he takes a sack, which lets the evil dojo owner, Bo Nix, take his own Hail Mary shot, which was incomplete, luckily. And then Geno Smith got hurt at the end of the third quarter, and Kenny Pickett played and led a scoring drive, but not to Johnny Stormfoot. Once again, Ashton Genty, truly one of the busts of the decade, probably, for fantasy. Not entirely his fault, mostly not his fault, but also, yeah, sometimes rookies have downsides, and we should build that into our ADP of them. Genty, a.k.a. Johnny Stormfoot, does 12 touches for 38 yards. No creativity getting him in space, just brutal to watch, brutal to rank every week. You know, you got to go a little lower, I guess. Of course he could bust one. Of course his ceiling is high. You know, maybe next week. The Raiders are on the road in Philly against a very angry Eagle team, while the Broncos will host the Packers. And finally, boy, you want to spend a couple of minutes questioning your life choices. Watch the Titans winning their first game since Week 5, going to Cleveland, beating the Browns. It was a weather game. However, unlike the other weather games, nobody was really freaking out on my timeline because nobody wanted to use any players on either team. And then it turned out 60 scoreboard points were racked up between the two teams. It was minor league football all around, with mistakes and fumbles and bad quarterback play. There was only one guy everybody was using, and that's Quinshon Judkins. He didn't have much of a day. He lost 4 yards on his first carry. It never got tons better, except losing 14-3 late first quarter. Judkins caught a little check down screen on the right sideline, tiptoed down the sideline, barely stayed in bounds. It looked like he was going to score, but he got tripped up at the 2, and they did, next play, give him the traditional Wildcat carry from the 2, but he got stuffed, so David Njoku would score instead. But we'll take it. That 158-yard reception saved Judkins' day, and he didn't play much in the fourth quarter because the Browns were down big and throwing every down, so Dylan Sampson played almost as many snaps as Judkins. You know, the next time we would really see Judkins was after the Browns had somehow rallied to score 2 late touchdowns, and they needed a 2-point conversion because Shedeur Sanders had fumbled away the first 2-point conversion try. Really would have been better off if you just kicked the extra point. I am still not into the double 2-point conversion at the end of the game. But anyway, for that second 2-pointer, Judkins Wildcat again. And it's some kind of trick play because he's running like to the sideline, and then he forgets to hand the ball off, I guess. That's what it looked like anyway. And the Browns don't score. And I guess probably justice was done. The Titans were the better team. Everything's relative. These teams super stink. Can you get anyone else in a fantasy playoff lineup from the Browns, from either of these teams? The answer should be no. I mean, we'll say Tony Pollard got some room. He did good physical work in the first quarter, but then Cam Ward shows elite blindness trying to throw a slant with Devin Bush, the middle linebacker, standing right in front of him. But next drive, Tony Pollard busting a long touchdown run in this economy? A career-long 65-yard run late first quarter, a good cutback, good speed. Turns out he did not forget how his feet work. And after a Shedeur Sanders interception late third quarter, Pollard got a wide open lane and ran for another touchdown to go up 21-17. I don't know. Do I find the argument convincing that we should be getting Tony Pollard significantly higher in the ranks for Week 15? Like, hey, Harris, please don't make me use Johnny Stormfoot again. Why can't I use Tony Pollard instead against the 49ers? You can. I'm not going to have it ranked that way. Mostly because the Titans' offense is terrible and a disaster. But I understand it. Why keep pouring money into Ashton Genty when at least Pollard made a couple of big plays on Sunday? I'm not going to have Pollard ranked that high. But I understand it, and I could be wrong. I'm just trying to play the odds as best as I see them. But you might see them slightly differently, and you might. It's that old thing of what's going to make you feel worse, and maybe you'll feel better just not having to deal with the Genty experience. I get it. So Shedeur Sanders does the Bortles here. He digs the hole in the second half. I mean, both offenses in the third quarter are truly horrible. Punt, 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 punt. Sanders seems to be a pretty accurate thrower when he has a clear read, especially man coverage. But whenever the Titans played zone, it just seemed to baffle him. His interception was just a hopeless duck thrown among 5 players. Jeffrey Simmons was just wrecking the game for the Titans defense, but you had Dylan Sampson lose a fumble deep in his own territory, which leads to a Chimere Dike touchdown. You did have Jerry Jeudy winning to the inside with a swim move late second quarter with no safety behind him. Sanders gets, again, a nice, easy, defined read down the middle. He's got a good arm, good throw. Jeudy was gone for a touchdown. And then in emergency time in this game, having dug the hole in the comeback effort, first of all, Sanders nearly got Cedric Tillman killed and definitely got him concussed with a medicine ball. But then, he did lead a couple of drives. He scrambled for 1 touchdown, hit Harold Fannin on a fade for the other. The Browns also had a punt blocked. It was bad. You're going to feel better off if you're not chasing players on these teams in Week 15. The Cleveland Browns making a desperate push to find a way to get the number 1 overall pick. They will play in Chicago against the Bears. We're sponsored again by Aura Frames, and it is really worth emphasizing. Looking for a holiday gift idea, this is another one that's just really great. A digital picture frame where you can preload an unlimited amount of pictures and videos before you send the picture frame, and you also can update the pictures and the videos that appear in the frame all year round after it's been given via an app on your phone. It's a great idea. I gave my parents the Carver Matte frame last year. They love it. The Carver Matte frame was named the best digital picture frame by Wirecutter. It's a gift so special, they'll use it every day because it'll be out there on display. You go to a school event for the kids or a sporting event or something, take a picture, boom, you can share it in that picture frame immediately. Save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com, and you'll get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver Matte frame when you check out using the code Harris. That's AURA frames.com, promo code Harris. Terms and conditions apply. Get yours now in time for the holiday. $35 off. auraframes.com, code Harris.
Today's guest.
For whom J Bell tolls, this is a song. For whom J Bell tolls.
And for whom J Bell tolls. It tolls for thee. He tolls for thee. He is here to help us with the Waiver show. You can find him on social media, Blue Sky, Twitter. Just look up Jeff Bell. You can listen to him do lots and lots of shows. You can. He's a maven, a mainstay over at Football Guys, and he's joining us for one swan song here at the end of 2025. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for having me. It is the end of 2025 regular season, but it's the beginning of the fantasy playoffs, so it's a new birth. Here we go, but fantastic to be here.
I mean, come on. And, I'm not doing, usually you and Dave, 2 of my great friends from Football Guys, come on for the Thursday show, and now there is no Thursday show in December, so I had to figure out a way to get you on for one last appearance, and we're going to use your appreciable skills here in the waiver wire segment. we probably should just think back and call it like the Trey Benson Memorial list, because we kept saying, all right, before we get to the main list, would you add Trey Benson? Like, I must have done that 10 times over the course of the season, just waiting and waiting and waiting. And now, they have to activate him this week or he's done for the season. The Cardinals are themselves done for the season. And great, fine. We're recording this very early on a Tuesday morning. Like, I grant you license. Yes, I now can see the future. And yes, Trey Benson has been activated in advance of week 15. How in the world could we feel good about using him sight unseen?
No, we can't feel good this week. I mean, I would think that he would step in over Bam Knight and play that early down role and maybe move into a little bit of the passing work, but you can't feel good about plugging that right into your lineup. We saw Omarion Hampton come back last night after being out for multiple weeks and split the carries with Kamani Vidal. I would expect, we know the Cardinals backfield is very likely to be committee if Benson returns, but yeah, you don't feel good about being on the early downside of a Cardinals committee that they've been throwing the ball a lot and relies on touchdowns probably to get some value there.
So like all aboard, go ahead and add him. Finally, he's not eligible for the main list. If you're in a super shallow league, it'd be the only place where Trey Benson would be available. But as we always say, it's a week to week league. We could reconvene next week and be saying, I mean, first of all, I'd be shocked if I asked you to come on for a second straight week. That would be, you're a good friend, but I mean, nobody's that good a friend. And then also, I could have seen a 90% work share for Trey Benson, and they suddenly changed their offensive, philosophy. But yeah, sight unseen, we're not using him. So I frankly am going to skip the rest of the, very shallow league type situations, and we'll move right on to our main lists. As always, I am going to write these names down in the show notes, so please don't crash your car. Also, Jeff, you may not be aware because you've not done the waiver show, I don't think, before. But when we have to add somebody, we also have to drop somebody, and when we drop somebody, we give them the Thursday boot. Because the segment is sponsored by Thursday Boots. It always is. It has been for years. ThursdayBoots.com. Get a gift card. What another great idea. I've talked about some great ideas so far on the show for gifts. ThursdayBoots.com, men and women. The boots are amazing. I've had pairs for 10 years. They've been a sponsor forever. ThursdayBoots.com. So we'll count them down 5 through 1 per our usual arrangement. 1/3 of Yahoo leagues or fewer is what these players are allowed to be owned in. And there's one guy for sure who's on my list via a technicality, and I'm really thankful he's there because it would be a pretty dingy list otherwise. We'll count them down. We'll go 5 through 1. Who's your number 5 waiver ad for week 15?
My number 5 waiver ad, I'm going to throw out Pat Freiermuth as my number 5 waiver ad. He's 11% rostered in Yahoo. We see Darnell Washington's dealing with a concussion. He might be able to be active for week 15. It gets a little bit messy because the Steelers do play on Monday Night Football. But if Washington is out of the lineup, I think that Freiermuth steps into what should be a heavy work share role. Jonnu Smith, we know that there was the story a couple weeks ago about Jonnu Smith and Aaron Rodgers not exactly being on the same page. I think Freiermuth would step in there with Washington out in an offense that has flown pretty heavily through the tight end position.
It would have been a pretty great gag. I can't say you didn't do it, but it would have been a great gag for you to come on and just do 5 tight ends. That would have been amazing. I would have. I couldn't not do 5 tight ends, but no, sure, he's a streamable tight end. If you made a fantasy playoffs and you're like, I can't do this anymore, or I was trying to get by with Zach Ertz or something, sure, yeah, Freiermuth will be in that whatever 11 to 15 range, and he's widely available. So I think that's a nice little piece of advice. I didn't go any tight ends on my list, but I'm not mad at it. My number 5, and you're going to have some of these names, so I'm going to ask you if you do have them. I'm going to let you talk about them if you do have them. My number 5, I put Andrei Iosivas. Did he make your list?
Andrei Iosivas is not on my list, but there is a player in proximity to Andrei Iosivas that is on my list. So,
is it Mitchell Tinsley?
No, it's Mike Gesicki.
Oh, Mike Gesicki, another tight end. Is he your 4?
Yeah, He is. He's 2% rostered in Yahoo. So the thing with Iosivas, I think that's a fair call out. I'm concerned because we have seen Higgins and Chase both out the last couple of weeks. And last week, obviously, we had both of them for the first time. But Iosivas' role didn't really change very much. And Tinsley on that Thanksgiving game, he almost had a great game. I mean, the targets were there, but he didn't bring anything in. But Gesicki's kind of moved into being that slot type of player since he's been back over the last 3 weeks. He's been tied at 9 since returning over the last 3 weeks. So I think with T. Higgins most likely out, T. Higgins probably should have been out in the middle of the game last week, but very much gave a this is our last shot vibe. And now T. Higgins is likely out. I think Gesicki over Iosivas for me would be the pivot there.
So I'll just say that my 5 is Iosivas, my 6 is Tinsley, and my 7 is Gesicki, because I do honorable mentions. In the show notes, people will see there's honorable mentions always, and 100% agree. Like the problem being, I just don't know. I've had too many times in my long fantasy life where Mike Gesicki seemed like the obvious logical conclusion, and then he got the first pass of the game and then never caught another one. He'll probably do that again at some point this year. But of these 3 guys, there's an opportunity, and I think the Bengals are one of those weird teams that. I don't know that they're mathematically eliminated, but let's face it, they're eliminated. And yet, because Burrow only just came back, I think they're going to try to keep the momentum going at least for 2 more games, and then we'll see what they do the last couple. But there's an opportunity there, and I'm with you. Iosivas sort of lucked into a better game on Thanksgiving, but through most of that game, I kept going, where's Mitchell Tinsley? I mean, where's Iosivas? Why is Mitchell Tinsley getting so much work? So the problem being it's tough to know which of the 3. I completely agree. All right, so we've done your 5 and your 4, both tight ends. The bit is, I mean, there's a chance here for you to do something marvelous, but we'll have to hold off on that. My number 4 is Pat Bryant. 3% roster. Did he make your list?
He's an honorable mention. There's a handful of receivers here with Pat Bryant, Jalen Coker, Chimere DK, Devon Vele, where it's one of those things of these guys are playing a lot of snaps, could have a day, but to recommend somebody plugging one of these receivers into their fantasy playoffs, that's not a bridge I really want to explore. But I think that Pat Bryant is a good call out there. He was on an honorable mention list for me. Yeah.
I don't feel he's number 4 in a week where there isn't an obvious you have to do this. I talked about that game just a minute ago on this show, and it's like you can make the swap right now. Do you agree with this statement as I make a declaration? You can immediately just drop Troy Franklin and add Pat Bryant.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one of the things I'm digging in, I do a backfield article every single week and then a targets article every single week. And I think they might be tied together with Franklin disappearing there with J.K. Dobbins' injury, because I can't help but wonder with Dobbins' injury, if Franklin's horrible run blocking plays into where Pat Bryant and even Lil Jordan Humphrey outsnapped him, with RJ Harvey not being necessarily on the same level of J.K. Dobbins when it comes to vision and feel at the running back position. If they didn't make that choice, saying without Dobbins, we need to go into a little bit of a run heavier package with our wide receivers here.
It could be, or it could just be Bryant's a rookie. He needed time to get going. They now view him as more of the future. Like you're right. It's tough to know what the motivation here is, but the fact is when Franklin, who looked like the number 1 receiver as recently as a month ago, can't really even get on the field. I mean, he's like the number 4 receiver now. I don't think it's even really close. Lil Jordan Humphrey, really, we're doing this again. So yeah, I'll just take the wild swing on Pat Bryant, but completely agree that there's nothing sure about it. Who's your number 3?
My number 3, I'm on the fence here, but I'll lean into the bit a little bit. I'll go Colby Parkinson as my number 3, 3% rostered. Tight end 4 since week 10. He's taken over. He's really stepped up with Tyler Higbee out. I don't know that it's very touchdown dependent, but at the same time, the Rams feel like they have the best opportunity to throw a passing touchdown of anybody in the league. And so Colby Parkinson, tight end 4 since week 10. We'll continue the bit here. We'll keep rolling with it. We'll do another tight end for you.
Oh my God. I haven't done the ranks yet. I'm
rostered on Yahoo. I don't really understand. I mean, I understand, but I don't understand why there's so much. Like it's maybe we view it as being fluke, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's because it's it's a fluke. Because the reason we view it as a fluke is because it's a fluke. I mean, he's a 2 or 3 catch a game guy, and one of them needs to be a touchdown. You're right. They have 4 tight ends now. They have 3. But that Jake Allen guy is out there an awful lot as well. I think that's probably why. But I'm not mad. If I was about to say, I haven't done ranks yet, but if I'm doing ranks right now, who winds up highest on the list between Freiermuth, Gesicki, Parkinson? Probably Gesicki. So that's not to say you're wrong, but I think when I do ranks later, they'll be close-ish. I think Gesicki will be highest because of the opportunity. But sure, you're getting pieces of a wagon. I get where you're coming from. If you have any more tight ends left, I'm going to be impressed. Any more? Is Taysom Hill coming up on this list?
We could say Isaiah likely because they're playing the Bengals this week, and we know that the Bengals are horrible against the tight end position. We've seen likely have some pretty solid games here the last couple of weeks. I mean, could have had if he didn't drop the ball at the goal line and then make a football move in the end zone. I mean, we're talking about 2 more touchdowns here on top of likely, but I will lean out of the bit now for them. I don't have any other tight ends that I should be telling people that.
That's probably good. All right, I'll do my number 3, Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary. That's what I like to call him. 25% rostered. Any consideration given to him?
No, I think that's a good call. I think we see them be about 50% share with the Giants backfield between him and Tyrone Tracy. And coming up against Washington feels like, especially with Daniels going down this past week, Ertz going down, 1-2-3 Cancun mode is probably very much here for Washington. So the Giants have been playing with the house money for the last 2 months. And I think that we've seen multiple games from Singletary pop into fantasy utility.
So is he one of your top 2?
He is not one of my top 2.
All right. Well, then don't say nice things about my pick. If you don't have to be nice about it. You just
well,
go, hell, Harris, what are you doing?
Chris.
Honorable
be there. I mean,
fair. Honorable mention. Yeah. There's also the fact that Tyrone Tracy, when last we saw him, was being carted to the locker room with a hip injury. But we're told that it's not that serious, and they had a bye week, and he probably will be fine. But if I think back to that Monday night game, and the Giants got completely boat raced in that game, but Tracy definitely started, didn't have a lot of success. Before Tracy got hurt, Singletary did start having success, and they sort of just changed horses midstream. And then, yes, by the second half, Singletary was, Tracy was out, so Singletary was the main guy. I don't want to do this either. Devin Singletary's not going to be in my top 30 running backs this week. Come on, obviously he's not. But again, you're in emergency mode. That's where I would be with Singletary. And this is why we're having different names on this list. It's completely fine. And just we're trying to give people ideas. The fact is people want there to be a definite answer. You need to tell me who I need to add. And the problem is probably there isn't one. And during the fantasy playoffs, we don't want people to go crazy and switch out players that have been, pretty good or else annoying, but still have big ceilings for Devin Singletary. That's just not. This has to be emergency mode. All right, we are at number 2 on your list.
Number 2, I really wish this game was not Monday night, but number 2 on my list is Jaylen Wright with the Miami Dolphins here at 3%. We saw him come in, and maybe it would be a hot hand if Devin Achane would be out because Ollie Gordon did get the first carries. Jaylen Wright stepped in after that. Jaylen Wright looked much more explosive. The early stories are that Achane could have returned, but they were blowing the Jets out, so they didn't feel like they needed to do that. So it's really flimsy here to go this, and especially being a Monday night start, it can be an absolute mess if you're thinking that you're going to wait to plug in Jaylen Wright in Week 15. But if Devin Achane is out, we know that ahead of time, we have seen the Dolphins have a lot of success through their running back position. That this team is just shocking 6-7. I've really enjoyed the memes with the Dolphins being 6-7 and the Chiefs being 6-7, and I saw one yesterday with the Tiger Woods and John Daly meme, and the Dolphins being the John Daly 6-7 and the Chiefs being the Tiger Woods buttoned up 6-7. So I think that Jaylen Wright, from what we saw last week, you're looking at potentially a starting running back, maybe streamable option. But again, with Monday night start and the early stories being that Achane would be fine, but also the Chiefs technically, or not the Chiefs, but the Dolphins technically are still alive in the playoffs. So maybe they decide we got to win this game.
I think they will. People will be shocked to hear I didn't put Wright in my top 5. He's an honorable mention though, very clear. And if you don't have a lot of other needs and you have an extra roster spot, I could see it. I could see adding Wright now. My way of thinking, I just reviewed that game for today's show also. I actually did not see Ollie Gordon get a carry until the third quarter. I thought it was all right until, basically he got tired, and then Gordon, like you said, either way, wasn't good. And the numbers that you're going to see in the box score out of Ollie Gordon came at the absolute end. So I definitely think they made a decision that Wright is the backup, and that's good information to have. The problem is usually teams don't talk so positively about an injury and say, oh, I could have gone back in, and then it turns out like he's devastatingly hurt.
Yeah, I hear that. And I do think that it's maybe a little bit similar but different to the Ravens backfield, where we knew that Justice Hill would be playing the snaps, and then now it's Rasheen Ali in that very passing specific role, but it's actually Keaton Mitchell being the backup for Derrick Henry. I could see that with the Dolphins here, where Ollie Gordon might have his short yardage role with regardless of what back, but it is actually Jaylen Wright that would be the backup for Devin Achane.
Yeah, and so you do have the problem of the Monday nightness of it all, and we might get totally new news on Achane's ribs by the time this posts. Who knows? And then you'll really, really want Jaylen Wright because he looked really good. He I think Miami's offensive line is wrecking people, and Jaylen Wright looked good in that game. My number 2, Kayshon Boutte. Did he wind up on your list?
It's a good honorable mention call out, like just kind of some of these receivers. I mean, Luther Burden's potentially an option. Vele, like I said, DK are like all kind of lingering out there. Boutte, I mean, I've been going with Boutte. A big play, gets a touchdown.
I've been going with Boutte on the list for a long time.
Yeah.
I wear the footy pajamas, obviously, but the issue with Boutte obviously is it's not a consistently big role, but he is an integral part of a very good offense, and I think he's the kind of player that if I'm choosing for a second flex or even in a deep league wide receiver 3, if I'm choosing between him and a lot of those other candidates, granted, none of them have a guarantee of more than 5 targets, but one of them is attached to Drake May and one of them is attached to freaking some third stringer in Indianapolis or a rookie in New Orleans or whatever. And I would want to be adding a player who's related to one of those wagon offenses. Who's your number 1?
Well, I do want to say he's kind of like the Colby Parkinson of wide receivers a little bit.
Nah, he's a deep threat. He can make your bones in one play. Colby Parkinson, not so much. Who's your number 1?
By the most technicality possible, Blake Corum at 33% is my number 1. I think.
Me too. We overlap on exactly one guy.
There we go. But I think that kind of paints the picture of what we're dealing with the waiver right now, where Corum barely qualifies at 33%. There's not a slam dunk option out there. And I think we both gave a handful of names that should you have to desperation plug somebody in, there are some choices out there. There's not a slam dunk probably outside of Corum being the most technical qualifier possible at 33%. Obviously, we saw the big game last week. He's probably going to lead everybody's waiver this week based upon the player that is the most available potential option with the highest upside. I think it's a little bit, we know the upside to start him in your fantasy playoffs, though it's a little bit iffy probably because it's still a 65-35 split. But at the same time, if Kyren Williams were to be out, I mean, this is a massive slam dunk league shifting type of player.
Yeah, for future weeks. I mean, Kyren Williams is going to be out this week, but in the next 2, it's possible that Williams gets hurt. And Corum is certainly one of the handcuffs we talked about that you want on the show last week. I'm asking out loud to myself, can you start Blake Corum if Kyren Williams is healthy? The answer is obviously this week it would have been great. The answer is probably yes. There isn't an appreciable difference between them. The veteran's deference is paid to Kyren Williams. Blake, the same question that I had about Devin Singletary is there a chance he's ranked in the top 30? In Corum's case, yeah, there's a chance. I haven't done it yet, but that's going to be his neighborhood. I'm going to start Blake Corum over Bam Knight, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. They have the Lions here this week. That could be, that should be the highest scoring game of the week. I'm seeing right now a line of 55.5, which is about as high as any game that we've seen so far this year. Lions do have a good run defense, but that should be a shootout. Yeah,
I don't know about game script. I don't think we're good at predicting game script particularly, but
I know.
I just don't want Bam Knight. There's a few, I don't want Tony Pollard. I don't, there's Tony Pollard's coming off a good game. I don't want him. I'd rather use Blake Corum. So that's why we would add him. All right, honorable mentions. We mentioned Tinsley, Gesicki, A.D. Mitchell. If you got word that Tyrod Taylor was definitely starting, A.D. Mitchell would have made my top 5 because we just didn't get a fair assessment this week, obviously. But I don't know that, so I don't know that. Jaylen Wright made the list, and then Brian Robinson. You gotta go get him if you have McCaffrey. I got Emmanuel Wilson, same thing. I got so many questions on the live stream on Sunday saying, "Hey, would you add him if you had to give up this guy?" And I keep saying, that doesn't sound great to drop that guy, but whoever the least likely player is to start on your team, the guy who would need 7 things to happen to be a starter on your fantasy team, yes, I would drop that guy and I would pick up Brian Robinson or Emmanuel Wilson. They are among the handcuffs. They're the ones that you would most want. And you mentioned Devon Vele as well. How about a streaming defense?
I'm going to go with the 49ers against Tennessee, 25% rostered. Let's Me too. The list wasn't fantastic when you run through everything, but the 49ers against Tennessee and Cam Ward, and we know they had a great game last week, surprisingly, but I think that this is the matchup that you would want to target.
I don't mind the Bears against the Browns. I don't mind the Cowboys against the Vikings. I don't mind the Saints against the Panthers, but yes, the one that I picked the most was San Francisco over Tennessee. We did it. We did this waiver wire, and we named a bunch of names, and they weren't all tight ends. What a good friend you are to keep coming on this show, Jeff. I appreciate you so much. You can find Jeff's work at footballguys.com. You can follow him on social media, and it's been just my pleasure to have you on again for this season. I hope we have a chance of getting you next year.
Fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really do appreciate it. Everything that you guys do, the community that you've built is fantastic. The Yacht Possums are great, and I appreciate any time we get to hang out.
That is so lovely. I want to also thank you for listening, and let me thank the sponsors as well. We had Blue Land for a different way to get cleaning supplies. I do it. Throw away less plastic. Don't eat so much plastic. And then a couple of amazing gift ideas if you're casting around for gift ideas from your list. Viore and Aura frames. Even if it's just a gift card from those, wonderful idea. Love it if you could use the codes and URLs because that's how this whole thing keeps happening. I put information about today's sponsors in today's show notes. All the current sponsors are listed at harrisfootball.com. Well, I have 2 more trips left in the submarine after weeks 15 and 16. Looking forward to that. Fantasy playoffs, real exciting, but we will not be doing a Thursday show this week. There will be a show tomorrow, though, me and Paywall Andy. We will be interviewing Drew McGarry. I'd love it if you'd be a subscriber. You can join us that way. Either way, we're all going to meet back here on Friday. We'll have Jake Trowbridge with our DraftKings segment for the week, and then also Cousin Josh. And speaking of Josh looking ahead, this is what he loves to do. Look way ahead. Stuff that you can't keep him committed to because, he can't win his point spread bets, but by golly, he can pick a great top 12. Josh and I are going to each take a stab at our very first top 12 redraft ranks for 2026. You won't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again so much for listening. Your hat is awesome. You're awesome for wearing it. I will talk to you next time.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The closing theme is Say Yes by The Wellspring. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.